Before we dive into this suspenseful story, please drop a comment with your city so we can see how far it reaches. And if you enjoy the video, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. A quiet evening turned deadly in seconds. Monique had just finished her shift at the local community center, walking home along the dimly lit street she knew too well. She had always felt a measure of safety here, in the rhythm of familiar sidewalks and familiar faces. But tonight, the city seemed to hold its breath. From the shadows, a group of men emerged, their intent unmistakable. They moved fast, surrounding her, their eyes sharp, hands ready. Before she could react, they bound her to a nearby tree, their smirks mocking the helplessness that surged through her. Heart pounding, she realized this wasn't random violence. It was prejudice, targeted, calculated. The words shouted over her, the slurs tossed casually, were meant to diminish her, to remind her of a world that constantly sought to define her by the color of her skin. And then, as if the universe itself had intervened, her phone buzzed. A single call, and help was on the way. But would it arrive in time? And more importantly, could it undo the fear, the humiliation, the stark reality of being judged before being seen? The gang circled, their whispers low but menacing, each movement designed to unnerve. Monique's pulse raced as she evaluated her options. Fight, flee, plead. But each seemed impossible. The ropes cut into her wrists, the bark dug into her back, and the world around her narrowed to shadows and intent. In that moment, she became acutely aware of her vulnerability, not just to these men, but to a system that often failed to protect those in her position. Her mind raced back to years of subtle injustices, the dismissals at work, the condescending glances in public, the constant reminder that, as a black woman, her presence was always scrutinized, often undervalued, sometimes threatened. But fear, sharp and immediate, began to give way to strategy. Each second counted. She remembered David's instructions during their training exercises, the principles of situational awareness, the calculated calm he always emphasized. As the gang moved closer, the sound of approaching sirens, or was it her imagination, brought a flicker of hope. Would it help arrive before it was too late? Could she maintain composure long enough to survive? The tension thickened with each breath, the silence between movements stretching unbearably, until a figure emerged from the distance, and with it, the promise of intervention. Monique's life had never been ordinary, yet she had adapted to its rhythms with grace. A devoted mother, a diligent worker, and a quiet force in her neighborhood, she moved through the world with measured steps, always aware of boundaries imposed by others' perceptions. The community center where she worked was both a haven and a reminder of limitation. She nurtured children, organized events, and created spaces of safety, yet always under the watchful eye of those who assumed she belonged nowhere else. At home, her husband, David, a CIA operative, balanced secrecy with love, his presence a silent shield she rarely needed to think about. She had learned to navigate the world with vigilance, eyes open to both kindness and danger. The evening had begun like many others. Quiet reflection after work, the thought of dinner, and a shared moment with David. But in those few minutes before the encounter, Monique could not have imagined that the night would test her courage, resourcefulness, and the very limits of human fear. Every small act she had perfected over the years, the careful smile, the measured step, the invisible endurance, was about to collide with raw threat, exposing her to both personal danger and the broader injustices that still lingered in society. David arrived without warning, his presence precise, commanding, and unyielding. The men hesitated, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of someone who radiated authority and control. His approach was swift, a blur of coordinated movement, and tactical awareness honed over years of service. Monique, still bound, felt a surge of relief tempered by awe. This was the man she had lived alongside, always strong, always prepared, and now her salvation. David's eyes scanned rapidly, evaluating threat and opportunity. At the same time, Monique focused on maintaining her calm, ensuring that any sudden movement on her part would not compromise the intervention. The gang, disoriented and suddenly aware of their vulnerability, faltered. The ropes that had held Monique began to loosen under David's efficient handling. The tension in the air was palpable, a mixture of fear, shock, and the raw adrenaline of life-or-death stakes. In those moments, the quiet strength of preparation, the discipline of training, and the unbreakable bond between husband and wife converged to shift the outcome from potential tragedy to triumph. Yet even in relief, the weight of what could have happened settled in. A stark reminder of both vulnerability and the often invisible line separating safety from catastrophe. Once free, Monique's legs shook beneath her, but her mind sharpened. She felt every emotion, the terror, the humiliation, the gratitude, but also a deep awareness of what this night represented. The encounter was over, yet the echoes of systemic injustice remained. She had survived, yes, but she carried with her the reminder that the world often judges worth through biased lenses. The gang had been thwarted, but prejudice lingered, not always so easily confronted. Walking through the empty streets with David, she reflected on the fragility and resilience of life, on the countless others whose courage went unseen, whose survival depended on luck, skill, or outside intervention. She understood, viscerally, that moments like these were both personal victories and societal commentary. Every act of bravery, every intervention, every choice to resist or protect illuminated the gaps in a world still marred by inequity and fear. Monique realized that her story, while intensely private, had universal resonance, a testament to the human endurance, strategic action, and the ongoing fight against systemic bias. Returning home, Monique and David sat together in quiet contemplation. The adrenaline of the night gave way to reflection, the mind reviewing every instant. The threat, the ropes, the sudden appearance of salvation, and the realization that survival was never guaranteed. Monique recognized that while her immediate danger had passed, the larger questions of societal justice and recognition remained. For every intervention that saves a life, countless others face peril unseen, unsupported, and uncelebrated. She vowed that her experience would not remain isolated, that sharing her story, amplifying the realities of risk and prejudice, could provoke awareness, inspire vigilance, and encourage courage in others. She understood that true impact extended beyond the personal. It reached into the lives of children, neighbors, colleagues, and strangers, challenging assumptions and demonstrating that humanity, skill, and bravery could disrupt even the most threatening circumstances. And yet, the lingering question remained, sharper than fear itself. Why must life-or-death brilliance be proven under threat to be acknowledged? How many others, unseen and unheard, must confront danger alone before society begins to recognize the value and dignity of every individual? Monique's survival was undeniable, but the systemic inequities that allowed her to be threatened persisted. Her story became a mirror, reflecting the subtle, insidious forms of racial prejudice and the resilience required to confront them. It was a narrative of caution, courage, and reflection, a call to acknowledge danger, value skill, and intervene wherever injustice arises. As the first light of morning crept through the windows, she understood the enduring lesson. Courage, once witnessed, is powerful, but only if we choose to see it, believe it, and act upon it. Monique's night of terror had ended, but its resonance was beginning. Every viewer, every listener, every individual who learned of their experience could draw insight, inspiration, and urgency. The struggle against prejudice, the need to recognize humanity in moments of danger, and the power of intervention were not abstract. They were lived realities, demanding attention, reflection, and action. And so, as her story concluded, one final thought lingered. When injustice threatens the vulnerable, will we step forward or turn away? When courage emerges in the face of oppression, will we honor it or allow it to fade into silence? Monique had survived the night, but the questions her experience raised were for all of us, challenging each witness to examine their choices, their awareness, and their responsibility to confront injustice wherever it rises. Because the night ended, but the lessons of fear, resilience, and the imperative to act would echo far across the city. The story of Monique's courage spread. Young eyes watched, hearts inspired, as the night's events became a lesson in resilience. Children saw her bravery and realized that even in the face of imminent danger, skill, composure, and courage could change outcomes. The impact rippled beyond her own life, planting seeds of hope and confidence in those who might one day face their own trials, ensuring that acts of courage are remembered and emulated. Monique returned to the familiar street where she had been bound, standing alone for a moment in reflection. The tree and dim streetlights framed her silhouette, the city stretching behind her, empty yet alive with silent stories. She considered the systemic challenges that had allowed the threat to exist, the unseen dangers faced daily by countless others. In this quiet moment, she understood that survival, while necessary, was only part of the story. The true lesson lay in awareness, action, and the recognition of courage wherever it emerges. Her experience became a mirror, asking each observer, will we act when injustice rises, or will we remain silent?